The judicial blockade that has erected itself against all of Donald Trump's executive orders. Of course, at the beginning of his administration this year, Donald Trump put forward a load of executive orders that were supposed to pull back a lot of the woke DEI kind of things that were going through American institutions at the time, and still are in many cases. And what we have found is that there is, unsurprisingly, as many people predicted at the time, a large cohort of activist Democrat judges who are putting through federal blocks. Now, I looked into this just to make sure that I wouldn't misrepresent it. I'm not American. I'm not entirely up to date with how the system works over there. But from my understanding, the executive orders can be challenged in court if groups put lawsuits against them. And what can happen is that the lawsuits and the lawyers who are administering them can shop out for particular judges who will go along with them, and if they find a judge who agrees with the lawsuit, they can put forward a temporary injunction which blocks that executive order from being put forward.
I'm completely mystified by this, because an executive order is an order of the executive which
yes,
he controls.
But given the separation of powers from the judiciary and the executive, one can override the other. The judiciary, in the form, in many cases, of a single federal judge, upon receiving a lawsuit, if they agree with the lawsuit and don't dismiss it, they can put
that's the way it's being interpreted. But I mean, really, there are three branches of government in the US, and you really need two of them to gang up on one of the other ones in order to force a decision. Whereas the executive seems to be acquiescing to these insane judges rather than taking the Andrew Jackson route, which is to say, okay, well, thanks for your judgment, but how are you going to enforce it? Have you got an army? No, you haven't. Right,
you and whose army? Well, there is the institutional aspect of it, which is that the institution is the presidency, to maintain legitimacy, is always trying to work within the rules. Donald Trump, through the executive orders, is trying to change the rules and bend some of the rules, and they still are to get around some of these temporary injunctions. But realistically, the conservative side in America and Britain and everywhere else has been too addicted to the rules for a very, very long time, when the rules have been purposefully established to subvert anything that the right would actually want. The purpose of a system is what it does, and if we take that mantra and apply it to this, well, the American judicial system appears to want to make sure that your kids are brainwashed, that illegals have more rights than you, and that they can vote in your elections. Because, as we can see here, in the last 24 hours, federal judges, through temporary injunctions, have ordered the Trump admin to bring back illegal aliens from El Salvador, restore funds to schools practicing DEI, restore funds to sanctuary cities, and drop proof of citizenship mandates for voter registration.
None of those are questions for the judiciary. All of those are questions for the executive.
Well, this is how the system works, though. This is sadly how it works. So let's look at what this is. And I would say, again, if that's how the system works, the whole system appears to be broken.
Just change the system
on purpose. Pardon?
Just change the system.
Well, that's what people are trying to do. Yeah. But do they have the willpower and backbone to actually do what needs to be done to change the system? We'll find out. What I would say is the system is broken either on purpose, or it was, more likely, built for a nation where there is a broad consensus between what everybody agrees to and the rules that everybody abides by, and much less division. So America, as it stands right now, is not a country that fits the system that was put in place for it 250 years ago. That's the sad fact of it. You can't have a nation like America right now under the rules that America was set up with, because it's just a very, very different country. Is the box working? The box is not working. The mouse is working. So here we go. Oh, bloody hell. I'm boomering it, Dan. You've infected me. You've infected me with your blasted boomerisms. You're a boomer, really, aren't you? Anyway,
spiritually.
Yeah, spiritual boomer. Anyway, so what's happened is that since the executive orders came out, there have been 170 lawsuits filed against them, and certain judges have gone ahead and blocked some of the executive orders, like a federal judge in New Hampshire blocked a series of directives from the education department, including a memo ordering an end to any practice that differentiates people based on their race, and another asking for assurances that schools don't use DEI practices deemed discriminatory. So is this what colourblind meritocracy looks like? No, it's not. So even the 90s ideal is being blocked by the judiciary at the moment. In another case out of Maryland, the admin was ordered to facilitate the return of a man who was deported to El Salvador last month despite having a pending asylum application, because asylum, like everything else, is set up to make sure that you have foreign aliens in your country and can't get them out of your country. That's the whole point of it. U.S. District Judge Stephanie Gallagher in Maryland said the government violated a 2019 settlement agreement when it deported a 20-year-old Venezuelan native, only identified as Christian. In Texas, a court document from an immigration and customs enforcement official was unsealed, revealing that migrants subject to removal under the Alien Enemies Act are only getting about 12 hours to decide if they want to contest their planned deportation to a prison in El Salvador. The government attorneys said that they were being given 24 hours to make the decision, and the ACLU, that organisation that cares so deeply about the historical American people and the well-being of the nation, says the time period violates a Supreme Court order that allowed the Trump admin to continue deportations, but that required the government give detainees a reasonable time to argue that to a judge that they should not be removed. Now, what that includes is being given a pro bono lawyer, 30 days to make your case, and then afterwards all of the legal fiasco that goes along with that. And given how many illegals there are in the country, in America, the whole point of forcing the government to have to provide them with all of these privileges, not rights, because all of these people are illegal in the country in the first place. So in my opinion, my esteemed opinion, should not be granted rights in the first place because you're not a citizen, you broke into the country, you are a criminal. The whole point of giving them these privileges is to make sure that the entire system stays clogged. If you've got millions of people you're trying to get out of the country and every single one of them needs a lawyer, every one of them needs a certain amount of time to be able to have their due process, then the whole point is to rig the system so nothing gets done.
Well, and again, I just want to stress this point. US District Judge Stephanie Gallagher in Maryland does not have an army, and he does. So I'm really going to need an American to explain it to me in the comments. Why the hell is he going along with this? Just say no.
Well, that would be a solution, but will he do it?
Trump, does he have it in him? That's the
people
question.
have been complaining about Trump for a while now, that he's been backing down on quite a few things, such as the tariffs and such as some of these peace talks with Putin and Zelensky and such. So
it's a misinterpretation to say he's backing down on the tariffs. I mean,
well, some people are claiming that that's what he's doing. And so the question is, does he have the backbone to back up his bark with a bite?
So, I mean, if he just defies the judges, then, like I say, it takes the other two branches of government, the judiciary and the legislative, to act against him. But if they lose the House and the Senate, they're going to impeach him anyway. So they might as well be impeached for defying the judges.
So you're saying that he might as well get what needs to be done, and then face the consequences afterwards?
Yes.
Well, let's see some of the judges themselves who are putting this through. Can you guess? It is Obama-appointed judge, making sure that your schools still have DEI in them. Obama-appointed judge, making sure that you've got sanctuary cities still. Clinton-appointed judge, saying that you need to make sure that they have due process if you're illegally in the country. So, yeah, again, get a pro bono lawyer, 30 days notice, and a hearing before removing them. So again, with the amount of illegals that there are in the country, that's going to make sure that the entire system is completely clogged up. Of course, the ACLU didn't really care all that much when it was Obama doing this because they are biased. These are not neutral actions, because the whole point of the separation of powers was this idea that each of the institutions within them would be broadly neutral. But the system is so...
How'd that work out?
Yeah, exactly. That was a fantasy. In the words of Adam Curtis.
Yeah.
Yes, which means that what you actually get is a load of activists on one side or the other, and judges and lawyers shopping out for the activist judges that will give them what they want. So the entire system is broken and rigged to make sure that nothing productive ever gets done, but allows for the gradual shift of things ever leftwards to make sure that the country is unrecognizable. Because as far as I'm aware, I've never been to America, but from what I can tell, even people in America who've been there say that it's unrecognizable from what it was 50, 60 years ago, as is the case with most Western nations. And another Clinton-appointed district judge blocking the citizenship one. If we look at the article talking about this, I keep pressing the box, but it's not working. So after Trump issued an executive order last month preserving and protecting the integrity of American elections, 3 separate lawsuits were filed in the D.C. federal court to challenge the policy, including lawsuits filed by the Democratic National Committee with the help of Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, the League of United Latin American Citizens, and the NAACP. So all of these are self-interested parties. There's nothing neutral or constitutional about this. The Latin American citizens want to make sure that, hey, my cousin S.A., he needs to get in to vote, eh? The NAACP want to make sure that their constituents, who may not have ID for some reason, can vote, and the DNC want to make sure that their natural constituents, illegals, can vote. That's all this is. That's all this is, and they just shop out to judges who will say, yep, sounds good to me.
And do we think that these judges are just useful idiots? Because I don't think that... I mean, I think that these people are just true believers. I don't think
they're useful idiots. I think that they know what they're doing to the country, and that's why they're in the positions that they're in.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know if I always buy that it is pure malice that drives these people, because I think that a lot of them genuinely believe they're doing the right thing. I think they are true believers.
They're quite possibly spiteful mutants, as well as supping from the cup of evil.
Yeah. And then the Trump admin is still trying to get it done using some technical haggling to make sure that they can still try and get people out, because one of the things that they were doing with the Illegal Aliens Act of 1798 was that they were trying to get rid of the Tren de Aragua gang that had infiltrated the country and was causing so much trouble last year. And so they're still deporting these people, and the way that they're angling it is that they said, well, actually, it was not the Department of Defense that was able to, that kicked them out. Oh, sorry, it was not the Department of Homeland Security that deported them. We got the Department of Defense to do it instead, because the lawsuit was only against the DHS. So they're still trying to find some wiggle room to make it work, but all that means is that the next lawsuit will make sure to include all of these departments that could potentially carry out the deportations. So
I'll just say, we have the same problem in Britain of a overly powerful and politicised judiciary. And people wonder why the story that I cited in my segment about young people losing faith in democracy, why that's such a prevalent opinion. Because we see things like this, where the nominal executive in America can't actually do anything that are in the interests of ordinary people.
Well, he's trying to implement the policies that got him voted in.
Yeah.
Domestic policies that got him voted in were, we're going to deport all of the illegals, make everything cheaper for you, and we're going to get a golden age. And all of the institutions, which is what, whenever you see the mainstream commenters talk about what democracy is, they don't say anything about the will of the people. If anything, they're more likely to talk about the tyranny of the majority. What they'll talk about is the democratic institutions which are in place to protect against the tyranny of the majority, which means that the democratic system in itself is a complete contradiction. You can't have both at the same time.
I've thought this before, actually, that when you see that clip of all the news hosts saying this is extremely dangerous for our democracy, you have to think of that in terms of like capital D democracy. They are referring to the structure itself. They're not referring to the system. And in the same way that when we would say monarchy, we're talking about, the royal family and their, the kind of the structure that exists around them. In the same way, when we say the democracy, we're talking about, well, these people.
Yeah, I mean, because these institutions, they're staffed by people who have been unelected, they've been put into positions by politically interested actors. In the same way that Tony Blair started all of those NGOs that would be staffed with Blairites to make sure that they could clog up the system and make sure only Blairite things happen. That's what these people are trying to protect when they say the institutions, because nobody believes anymore that the institutions are just there to make sure that everybody sticks to the rules in a neutral way. That's not what they're there.
You've got a photo of an El Salvadorian prison up there. Bukele had this same problem with judges, is that judges were trying to wreck everything he did, and he dealt with them. I don't know how he...
I believe he just... Didn't he just get the army to go in, arrest all of MS-13 anyway, and then when...
No, I'm talking about the judges.
Oh, the judges. Oh, okay.
So he had the same problem with judges, and he sorted out. Maybe he used the army on the judges as well. I don't know. But whatever he did, do that.
But Harry, like you said, it just comes back to will. It comes back to the kind of person who's going to stare down the barrel and not blink when they're challenged. If it comes
to a state of crisis, and I think there is a national emergency in America, I think there's a national emergency in many countries in the West, it comes to the point of who's willing to actually exercise executive power to get done what needs to be done.
Well, in Britain, certainly, I'm of the belief that a state of emergency is necessary to get past all the nonsense.
People point out the state of emergency has been used in America for something like the Patriot Act. We've had states of emergency declared to make sure that we can get lots of really bad stuff done. The point is, well, yes, if our enemies are going to do that to hurt us, then we should be firing back with.
Well, it's a tool. It's a tool in the toolbox, right? And for so long, the right have been so scared of exercising any kind of political tool, whether that's the state or using, for example.
Well, that would make us just as bad as them.
Oh, you're so right. I hadn't considered that.
No, we need to be worse. No, I'm serious. We need to be much worse.
We just need to be prepared to play the same game as them.
You're all right, because listen to these people who have been deported against the wishes of the courts and what it was that they did. So this was 4 men who were all members of Tren de Aragua. So immediately, some South American, Central American gang you don't want in the country in the first place because they are criminals. So each of the 4 men were identified as members. According to the declaration of Tracy Huttle, a unit chief of field operations with the US, with ICE, one man admitted he was a member of the gang and that he recruited prostitutes for the organization, and another was charged with multiple crimes, including a discharge of firearm and theft. Another man is allegedly a sex offender who was charged with human smuggling and convicted for domestic assault, and the last was arrested for possession and use of drug-related objects. So they're all violent, sex offender, criminal, drug trafficking, human trafficking gang members, and the system, the due process system, would have you believe that it's only fair to waste the American taxpayers' time and money by making sure they get their day in court.
Some, I assume, are good people.
Yeah, so because, remember, deporting criminals is literally the Holocaust, according to places like The Forward. Now, this article is exactly what you expect it to be. Yom HaShoah has taught us that we need to be kind to criminals. I don't want to read anything in the article. I want you to pay attention to this photo. Kristi Noem, Secretary of Homeland Security, looks at men deported under President Donald Trump's administration during a tour of the Secot prison in El Salvador on March 26. Now, they say you can't identify members of MS-13 based on their tattoos. There's no signifiers that men with tattoos happen to be a member of MS-13. Could they be making that argument? Because if you look at the tattoos, there's a big MS.
Well, maybe all of those guys with their shirt off in the front row, maybe they just shop at Marks and Spencer's.
Maybe, perhaps they're big Michael Sheen fans.
Could be, yeah.
But yeah, we've got MS, 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 back here, MS. Could it be that, very similar to MS-13 in El Salvador itself, they tattoo all over their own bodies saying, "I am a violent rapist and criminal who is a member of the gang MS-13. Might that have something to do with why it's so easy to identify them and why the liberal media is so eager to convince everybody that tattoos have nothing to do with it? Because it's kind of a hole-in-one, isn't it, when you look at a guy who's got MS tattooed on him?
Well, maybe they're right. I mean, my great-aunt Nora had a massive MS tattoo all across her back, so maybe it's got nothing to do with being in the gang. It's just something that people do.
Maybe it's just shits and giggles. After all, remember, because a lot of these kinds of opinion piece articles by Michelle Goldberg in the New York Times is trying to convince everybody that all of these tattoos, they're just related to families. Like one of these people, this gay tattoo artist from Venezuela, he just happened to be covered in tattoos that seem to be familiar with Tren de Aragua members, because it's all about family. All of the tattoos are supposed to be sentimental family tattoos, and they point out in here around 90% of the migrants sent to Secot have no criminal records aside from immigration or traffic violation.
That's because they killed the police every time they went near them.
Yeah, that just means
why they don't have criminal
that just means they've not been caught yet. But again, hey Holmes, I ain't got no criminal record, eh? I don't care. You've got tattooed on your body that you are a gang member. Get the hell out of America. And so hopefully Donald Trump can stay the course and exert strength, power, willpower to be able to carry on deporting these people, because I think it's still in the numbers of between 200 to 300 who have been deported right now. When you have violent criminals like this in your country, it needs to be in the realm of 20 to 30,000.
I like this bit of the judge stuff, because once they've gone to El Salvador, there is literally nothing the US judge can do about it, apart from possibly convince the US to invade El Salvador in order to get them back, because El Salvador doesn't give these people back once they've come in.
No, there have been reports of Secot, to be fair to what the Liberals are saying, does seem to be a pretty brutal prison, but you need to be brutal to violent gang members who were terrorising your country.
Well, and
they don't deserve your sympathy. It's not justice.
You say it's brutal. A couple of 100 years ago, these men would have been hung or shot or boiled.
One step at a time, Dan. One step at a time.
This is not brutal. This is
lenient.
Yes.
This is far too lenient for the likely crimes that these men have committed. They are getting off easy.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.